Party's not a party's a man who fights crime, and we're gonna watch him fight for a minute at a time with John and Niall and a guest who doesn't rhyme. It's Bat Minutes!
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the podcast that comes on like a rose, and everybody knows it'll get you in Dutch. You can look, but you better not touch. This is Poison Ivy, the Bat Minute hiatus special on the hit film, well, hit, quote-unquote, film, Poison Ivy. I am one of the hosts, Niall McGowan.
I am your other host, John Parker. I touched, but I did not look.
And he's like, frankly, I didn't want to look after I touched. It was some things people are just not meant to know, quite frankly.
No, in keeping with the nature of this movie, let me just say, sometimes it's fun not to look.
But to talk about this, it's sort of like, I kind of want to preemptively say, like, lost gem of a movie, kind of, almost. Mm-hmm. We'll get into it. But we have online content creator and frequent guest, Brittany Simon.
Hello.
Hey.
I'm excited to talk to you guys about it. I have, like I said, notes. I have lots of notes. I'm very excited.
I still feel a little bit bad, Brittany, because in the lead up, I was like, oh, if you have any trouble getting the movie, let me know. And then you announced yesterday you'd bought the DVD, and I was like, oh, you didn't need to buy a DVD of it.
I'm dedicated, and I needed a PlayStation to play it because my VHS player and DVD player is so old it doesn't even connect to modern TVs. So I had to steal my brother's PlayStation to play it, and it made me feel really good to hold the DVD in my hand again. Though I will be honest, it felt pretty good.
Yeah,
it's been a while. Yeah, I do buy Blu-rays if it's my favorite movies. You know, like I have Star Wars on Blu-ray, but let me tell you something. I don't play them. They just sit there looking nice. I just play them on Disney.
It's just the odd chance that like the net just goes down. And you're just desperate. Yeah. They're like, I need something. I've got physical media now. No one's needed it for like 10 years, but I got it just in case.
Yeah. And was this everyone's first experience of this, or have either of you watched it before? Because to me, I'd never heard of this movie. I'd never seen this movie. I'm not a big fan of erotic thrillers generally, but I liked it.
This, to me, was a Sunday night your parents are watching while you're going to bed. Like it was like you'd be sent to bed for school the next morning, and you know, like your parents have rented something, and you know, because again, this is my generation have been like, well, it's the mid 90s at this point when I was a kid, so this was the kind of thing that was out, and I've seen bits and bobs of it because it was always like a Channel 5. Again, it's a very Sunday night movie. It's just the sort of thing that always played, but I always dismissed it as being like, oh, it's like a lame erotic thriller, and then I actually did watch it when we were doing the Batman and Robin season, because I was like, well, it's got Drew Barrymore, who was in Batman Forever, and it's called Poison Ivy. I'll see if there's anything worth talking about. And then I did watch it, and I was like, that's a hiatus episode right there, this movie. But Brittany, were you familiar at all with Poison Ivy?
Not at all. Like completely shook. Even the opening scene it grabbed me in 2 seconds. Like it was so good. Even the start of it, but I had no clue what I was going into. I didn't watch trailers on purpose. I know you sent me one, but I don't watch trailers. I try very hard to just enjoy things like with no knowledge. So I didn't even bother. I just made sure it was the right movie. And then I got the DVD and I started it last night and I dreamt about it. And so I basically had mini nightmares last night about, like all of the impending doom that ends up in this film. But no, I was completely surprised. I was not prepared for a 90s film. It was quite, I don't want to say modern, but I want to say like them saying the word lesbian in the first 5 minutes was like, what? What's happening? 1992 is woke. Well, it was pretty cool.
Despite this movie being about a straight seduction, it's a very queer movie.
It's much. That's the thing about it, though, because you look at it and it's got like a 5.4 in IMDb, 41% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think it's just the critics of the early 90s didn't get it, because I think it's way, way better than that. And it's a female director, Kat Shea, who comes from the Roger Corman like school of filmmaking. She was
let me just say, I think you can tell it's a female director because if a man made this, it would have done what every other erotic thriller does and why I don't like them, and it would have just focused on, oh, isn't it dirty? Isn't it sleazy?
the Poison Ivy sequels, which with Alyssa Milano and stuff, that would have been, I haven't seen them, but I imagine they're probably much more like, oh yeah, hot, sexy, young girl comes in and seduces so-and-so.
That's exactly what, I haven't watched them either, but I read about them, and that's exactly what they are.
But this one really strikes me, it's a movie like, it's kind of from the female gaze in a lot of ways. And it's just weird because Kat Shea she made movies like Stripped to Kill for Roger Corman. And then she was making Stripped to Kill 2, but she ended up leaving the project because Roger Corman said, like, you've got to put more boobs in this. It has to be more pornographic. And she was always, I feel a bit bad for her, she was always struggling to be like, I've got things to say. I'm a legitimate filmmaker. I'm not just like throwing out cheesy Roger Corman stuff. And this was her attempt to be like, look what I can do. And this movie was up for the Grand Jury Prize at the Sundance Film Festival. It was a big hit amongst the critics initially, and then once released, nationwide in the US, bombed, and only kind of got word of mouth. And I'm assuming the reason I got word of mouth is because people were like, "Oh, it's really hot. There's like it's hot and Steve Drew Barrymore sex scenes and stuff." And it's
this old guy sleeps with a young girl. Yeah, it's
actually, in terms of the female gaze, there were scenes where I noticed like she wouldn't show like nipple directly, or would be just under the boob, or just the hands, or just the thighs. And I know a lot of women in the sex work industry who film this way, with only showing close-ups of body parts, and it's so erotic to women. And that stood out to me because I was like, oh, that's very abnormal in most films. So now that you guys are saying this out loud, I'm like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense that it was directed by a woman. I didn't even think about that.
And it's got this kind of vibe of like, because I don't know if you're fully aware, Brittany, of like Drew Barrymore's reputation in 1992.
Just that I learned that, and this was new, and this, I don't know if this is what you mean, but like that she was like a child addict and everything.
Oh yeah, she was like addicted to cocaine at age 12.
I did not know. I was shocked. I was so sad for her, and she wrote a book apparently about it. I kind of want to read it now.
Yeah, she's got watching Drew Barrymore now on her talk show is so strange because she's trying to be like so folksy and so like, hey, like I'm your mom can watch me. I'm Drew Barrymore. I'm just this lovable lady. And every time she mentions something about her past, you're always like, I know you've been through a lot of crazy stuff, Drew, that you can't mention on daytime TV, but it's always sort of alluded to. And even she had on Sarah Gilbert recently.
Yes, I saw it. That's what I watched this morning. And they were talking about the kiss and how it was their first kiss with the woman together for this film. But they were like, you're right. It's the talk show. Like, oh, this is a daytime show. Like, this is my voice for the public.
Yeah.
And it was so, you know what I want to ask them is, hey, what's it like being 16 on a film and doing sex scenes with a 58-year-old man?
Oh, God.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah, totally.
In any other movie, if you said that was the plot, you'd be concerned for the actress. You'd be like, oh, I hope somebody was looking out for it. But in this, I never got that.
That's what I was going to say, actually, because you assume that, oh, this is complete exploitation of Drew Barrymore's, at this point, is known as a wild child. She's like, oh, she's, trying to break out of the mold by doing like really sexy roles and stuff. But at this point, she is 16 years old. She has legally emancipated herself from her parents. Oh. And she has made the choice to she's like, I want to get away from being the little girl from E.T. And so I would imagine she probably worked quite closely with Kat Shea to be like, I want to portray myself as an adult actress, but not in an exploitative way. And watching like the sex scenes now, it is very like, it's very, very tame. And maybe back in like 92, it was like, oh my God. But nowadays it's like, oh, this is very, very low key. Maybe I don't know what you guys thought, but
no, it is absolutely. It's not sleazy. It's more, well, as the name implies, it's erotic. Is the way it's done, isn't it?
I would agree. Actually, I watched an interview where she said this film was really good for her because it allowed her to be like angry and get out her frustrations. And I thought that was so interesting because you're right. If someone is cognizant enough to emancipate themselves and is cognizant enough to have experience, I mean, Hollywood, I think we know this now with Weinstein and everything, it is a very difficult place to survive in. And these children from a young age are exploited. But I think many of them, if the opportunities come about, can, I don't know, gain power, I guess, like switch the role, if you will. So I can understand if she utilized this movie to do that. I'm kind of sad it bombed because I also really loved it. Like the way it was filmed, the feeling of it, the tragedy, the anxiety it gave me. Oh my gosh, it gave me so much anxiety the whole time.
Even from like the opening scene, like because the first like half of the movie basically it's not about this erotic, seduction of the father. It's entirely about this teenage relationship between these two girls, and it's so like the big thing I really, really took away from it, but watching it now, making notes on it and stuff, was like it's a really fascinating character, like the character of Ivy as she's known, because as a character we know at the end we know nothing about solidly,
nothing at all. No.
But it's so she's so intriguing. Like it is really like, oh, they really painted this very, very well. Actually,
well, and I assumed from the opening scene that what we were going to get is a queer story because it's clearly kind of, without just coming out and saying it, Sarah Gilbert's character, what's her name, Sylvie. She really likes Ivy in that way, doesn't she?
Yeah.
It never explicitly sort of goes down that path, but she's hoping for more from this. And I think Ivy kind of is, she sees that and is thinking,
I think even at the very end, in the climax, I think they allude to the fact, like they kind of put on the table that it is blatantly a queer romance. And Ivy does reciprocate the feelings in a very strange manner we'll get to, where she wants to be both lover and mother to Sarah Gilbert in a kind of...
That was weird. Yes.
Very bizarre manner.
Can I tell you, it's kind of so relatable though, because I've noticed that even throughout my own life as a queer woman and a switch, it often happens that way, where like in a less creepy, psychotic way, but like where you are caretaker and partner. They talk about this in like evolutionary psychology. They talk about, and I'm not a professional here, I'm just like rattling off what I've read, but people have talked about this, how partners often seek out other partners who are also parent-like. And given that Ivy's character is sort of abandoned and has like a coked out mom and has a really rough childhood, you can even see when she's trying to fix things, it's so manipulative and psychotic, but it's also so trauma-based that a part of you almost feels bad for her. And at the same time, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm so like because I've met people. Have you guys ever met somebody like an Ivy? Because I have.
No, not that
maybe
I'm aware
not to
of.
this degree, but certainly a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have. And then what I find fascinating about them is that you do feel bad for them. You want to help them and save them. But the dilemma is that they are so self-sabotaging that they won't allow themselves to be saved in any healthy way. It's only on their terms through the trauma lens. And so you almost do feel bad, but the release at the end, and I know we're not going to skip around and say what happens just yet, but like the release at the end made me feel relief for her as well.
Oh,
because I totally get that.
Yeah. Like, right? Because I don't know if a person like that ever gets a chance to ever be more cognizant of the way they impact people. It's very hard for me to know, what's the recovery look like for someone like Ivy? Can you recover if you're an Ivy? That's the question I asked myself many times through the film.
What I love about that as well is because I felt the same. I was sort of, I don't think she's a villain, even though she kills somebody in this movie. I don't think she's an out and out villainous character. You are supposed to be sort of feeling bad for her.
Well, I think that's the kind of... Even like to go back to like the very beginning where we get like the New Line logo pops up. New Line Cinema, of course. Most people would be like, oh, Lord of the Rings. Also, the house that Freddy built. Like made their entire studio on the back of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. But they have a history of Bob Shea, who was like the CEO of New Line, stepping in to make like creative decisions, much to the detriment of a lot of movies. And this one being another one of them, wherein I think the script is written, Ivy's not supposed to be, she's villainous, but she's not like a black hat villain. She's like, she's a much more complex character. But Bob Shaye was the one to go. The original ending, apparently, was Ivy gets away. And it just ends with her hitchhiking and getting into another car and presumably going off.
It's going to start over.
Yeah, but he was like, evil must be punished. This girl is bad, and therefore she must die at the end. Which is kind of...
though, because what does she want ultimately? Is she doing these things to be mean?
Oh,
No.
I think she's everything they say about in the ending narration about her being like she's as lonely as Coop is like, I think that's all. I think Bob Shaye was just like, all I know is like, in simple terms, she's the bad guy, so she has to die. Whereas I imagine the screenwriter and Kat Shea were like, that's not this movie, man. Like, this movie's a lot more in the gray area than like good, bad and stuff.
Well, two things I noticed in an interview. One host said that the books was originally based off the idea of a niece living with her aunt and uncle and falling in and wanting to seduce the uncle, which I thought was interesting that they changed it. And then the other thing I heard or noticed, sorry, at the end of the film when she's talking about the mother, she says she wanted to die. She wanted to, like, she saw it as like almost like I gave her what she needed. But that's the thing, is that the mom didn't want to. When she pushed her, the mom wanted to live. Yeah. And that's often the case with most people who are thinking about, like, chronic pain. I'm recently undergoing like a diagnosis of an autoimmune disorder, and it really is interesting living with like chronic pain. And so I could understand the mom's perspective of like, oh my God, I'm 38. My life is ending. I don't know when I'm going to die. She's like in her own depression loop. But the solution in Ivy's brain is, I'll help her do what she wants. But does she really want it? And often people who want to die, suicide especially, they don't really want to die. They just don't know how to cope. And so like they need help. And so Ivy in her little twisted brain goes, I'll help in the way I know how to. And I'm like, girl, that is not what we needed. Like, that is not.
I think she might be being serious, though. You're right. I think she might be genuinely seeing it as a good thing.
Yeah. I think, totally. It is. One thing that really got me hung up, though, when they revealed that Cheryl Ladd, like the mother, was 38, I was, again, now, because I'll be 35 in like 2 or 3 weeks time.
Yeah, I'm 36 now.
So I'm just like, no, that is not possible that she's 38. And she's married to Tom. One of the big things too, and actually speaking about the opening, really pissed me off. Tom Skerritt gets the top billing. You go in this movie, it's like New Line Cinema, Tom Skerritt, Sarah Gilbert, Drew Barrymore. I was like, what the hell is this crap? Like,
it should be Drew and.
I would say it's fully Sarah Gilbert, Drew Barrymore, and then maybe if you want to go later on, like and Tom Skerritt as the dad or whatever. But
did you guys notice in the credits that Leonardo DiCaprio was in the movie?
Yeah, apparently his part was cut. He gets a credited role. I don't know if he gets if he gets any. I'm assuming this would have been way before like he was. Leonardo DiCaprio. I didn't notice him. So wait, was he not? Because I didn't see it. I only saw his name, and I was like, wait, where was he? How did I miss him?
Yeah, he would have stood out, even though he wasn't a big deal. He's got a unique look.
Right? I think he's credited as Guy, and from what I understand, his role was cut out. But it was like it would have been like he would have been one of the kids at the tire swing or whatever. Or
right, that's what I figured. I must have missed him because interesting. So he was credited but cut out.
I guess maybe he did the work, and they're like, well, if he said a line, like, well, we have to pay him, we have to give him residuals or whatever. Funny. But his role isn't there anymore. But that's where we begin off, though. I don't know. Is it? Would you call this thing a tire swing? Because it's not tire, but it's like a
rope swing.
A rope swing?
Just a rope swing.
Yeah. I had those a chain swing as a kid. Yeah, I had those as a kid growing up.
I used to do that all the time as well. Yeah.
This is the whole scenario though seemed very strange to me. Where it's supposed to be that Sarah Gilbert is. Coop, Sarah Gilbert, of course, everyone, will remember her from Roseanne way back in the day.
Right. I've barely ever seen Roseanne, so I didn't. So it's the first time I've really seen her. And as soon as I saw her on screen, my first thought was, if I was that age, I would have been in love with her. Like if we went to the same school, totally. I would have been like, oh my God, this is exactly the kind of girl I like.
Cute.
Oh, yeah. Even now, I really appreciate her style. I love the long coats.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, though, as a glasses wearer, is like Sarah Gilbert doesn't wear glasses, and you can tell in this movie. Those glasses, they don't fit on her face properly. It's very much like, yes, your character has glasses now. Go. And she's just like, okay.
Yeah, but glasses make everyone hotter, so come on.
Good point.
Oh, she has cool hair as well. I forgot about that.
Oh, I loved her hair. I love Drew Barrymore's hair, actually. The bleached look is such a look on her. And the red lipstick. I mean, she really owned this role they both did. I thought they both played their tropes so good. In the scene, do you guys remember the scene where they're talking about like, oh, I'm a nerd. And she's like, you're not, you're beautiful. I love you. And they say like, I love you for the first time.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about that scene. Gosh, as a girl growing up, like, I felt like I related a lot to those moments, you know, again, without the crazy, but it was like, oh my gosh, like there really is a moment where you realize your trope. Like I'm a nerd, or that's the hot girl, or I have a friend who's hotter than me, or I'm the hot girl in the group. There is always a competition. And so it's nice to kind of see that played out. But also, you know, what's so funny is, you know, in the, I hope it's okay that we're skipping around a little bit, but okay, good. When the mom finally catches the husband and the Drew Barrymore, and they have that moment, and she goes, "How did I not see this coming?" I was like, "Girl, I don't even know how you didn't see it coming." This is a trope of life that, you know, I grew up with a very self-aware mother who was always aware of like, things happen, people get tempted. There's like always this trope of a young girl who's trying to like play with the big boys. And as a woman growing up, absolutely. You always had crushes on older men, older women. You always tried to think like, I'm mature enough to be seen in this way. And it's interesting that Drew's character was so eager to be seen as an adult while still being so trapped in her adolescence. Like during the tattoo scene, pressuring, you know, get the tattoo, fighting, the way she held on to the money. I loved this. It felt like whiplash for half the film, but in a good way, like in a way that made me feel like, okay, this is actually quite insightful into the mind of, again, trauma brain.
Yeah,
it really impacts
totally
people.
fit a character. Yeah,
I was really intrigued though by the idea that like we know like in the real world, Drew Barrymore was 16 at the time of filming.
Yeah,
but because we don't know anything about Ivy, really, if they turned around and said she was 28 at the end and she was just pretending to be a teenager, it would track to me.
I'd buy it. Yeah,
it would feel like she's trying to reenact an adolescence she didn't have or something. She's so mysterious. It's like, yeah, she could literally be any age. Like, she could be anywhere from 16 to 30 at this point.
Yeah, and I get the impression, like, you know, we don't know anything, as you say. She could have done this before. We don't know. Yeah. We don't know anything about this person.
She seemed to be a pro at it. It could have been like a con.
Oh, yeah, but as soon as she meets the mother, she knows exactly what to say to her, exactly how to act. It really does feel like I've been here before. I know how to, I know how to work people. Like this is my whole deal.
Didn't you think that was interesting that a 16-year-old or a high school student could so easily seduce the adults around her?
Oh, totally. Yeah, it really felt like she's been having to do this in her entire life, and so and it might be just those 16 years. Again, it could be 25 years. She could be like, I've done this. I did this once when I actually was 16, but that was a long time ago.
Something I found fascinating about that as we go through, because again, we're jumping around, who cares, is the way that Sylvie, or Coop, as you say, she kind of, not much more than halfway through the movie, she gets wise to it. And she doesn't want any part of it anymore. I never saw that coming. The way she's actively like, oh, screw this person. God damn it.
Really? You didn't think that it was so like personal, the way things, because like this was such a personal film, like everything was so personal.
Oh, it's very personal, but I didn't expect the plot to take that turn. I thought and at the very, very, very end, she does go back again, but I thought she was going to just always stand by. I know that she's obsessed with this person, but no, there is that period where she's like, I don't want anything to do with her. Get out of my house. Get away from my dog.
I really love like this. So many things in terms of like the way they layer out the characters, because even again, like to go, in the opening scene, one of the really cheesier bits of dialogue they have is because talking about queer vibes, the movie it opens with close-ups of the tattoo on Ivy's leg, which is actually we find out it itself is a lie. It's a temporary tattoo. One thing too I actually really took away from this movie is like it's not afraid to show like the bumps on the skin. Like usually if you see someone's leg in a movie, they'll have like airbrushed it and like make sure it's lit to look pristine, but it really looks like that is an unblemished leg you get to see, which I appreciate.
That skin.
That's why I love 90s movies. That's literally 90s movies feel, maybe because I grew up with them, but they feel like real people to me much more so. Like I'm gonna say something controversial right now. I hate Marvel films because they're so fucking polished. It's just like it drives me crazy. Versus like my eyes just don't like it. Versus 90s films like this one, it just felt like, yep, that's life. We're watching real life right now, but in a weird way.
I like them to a point, but you're right about them. Like, I've never adored a Marvel movie. At most, I'm like, yeah, that was pretty good. But visually, I think they're revolting.
I think it depends what they're doing with them. A lot of them they follow a formula and they serve a purpose. So it's like, this is here to do what it does, and a lot of the time it does it well. Whatever.
Yeah.
But actually, speaking in terms of superhero stuff, though, because one of the opening lines of dialogue, which I thought was a bit overly cheesy, along with this, I have to say, the only thing that really took away from the movie for me was the score. I thought that was way, way too dated. And it was
You know what it felt to me like was, it felt to me like the music that plays in Twin Peaks when it's like James and Evelyn.
Yeah, it's like I think it's going for like, melodrama. Yeah. Where it's like, I think this movie needs a softer touch. Like it needs something a little more. And apparently the guy who did the score was a guy called David Michael Frank. And the only other notable score he did was for Suburban Commando, starring Hulk Hogan.
I loved that movie growing up.
But
that's pretty great.
But yeah, one of the as Coop is sitting talking, she's sitting gazing at Ivy. She is very totally enraptured
and questioning her queerness. Like she says, like, maybe I'm a lesbian, and I was like, maybe you are a girl, and obviously she is.
But that's another thing I liked. Actually, it's not black and white. She's not like, I am a lesbian. It's much more like real life. Like, oh, maybe, I don't know.
but then she follows up like, oh, maybe I am a lesbian. I said I was once, but it was only to upset my mother. And there's so many things about she's so off the cuff judgmental of Ivy, where she says like, Supergirl at least had the decency to wear tights. Not that I read comics. I'm more of the politically, environmentally feminist poetry reading type. Boring. Which is so like that dialogue would never make it to screen in a movie nowadays. They'll be like, society's moved past that kind of binary cliche of like, you can read comics and read poetry at the same time. That's not a big deal.
Yeah, but I do like the way it's basically her. It's more insulting herself than comics readers. It's basically going, I'm dull. Like, you don't want to know about me.
Yeah.
Or is she secretly, because of the tattoo scene, sharing her real thoughts of she thinks she's a better woman because she's not low class and slutty.
That's the thing. There's so much going on about like, because even her saying like, not that I would read comics, and then labeling herself this thing, but we know that she wants to appear like she's part of like the down and outs. She's hanging out by the rope swing with the poor kids, and then you find out later that she's actually like from a very elite family.
Oh, they're super rich. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and the way Ivy says that to her, doesn't she? She says, you're rich rebellion or something like that, guys, when she's trying to be like it's true. Like, so Ivy's from the down and out, like the real slums. And then Coop is like this kind of pretending to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so much about the fact that Coop is pretending to be, and Ivy is also pretending to be. So it's kind of like, maybe that's why Coop's so like in the middle of it's like, I don't want anything to do with this girl. It's because like, you can't play a player. She's like, well, I'm already lying about who I am and what I do all the time. I'm painting myself as this particular kind of person, and that's just what Ivy's doing. She's just doing it to like a more homicidal degree.
True.
Can I offer? Sorry, go ahead. Please finish your thought.
Oh no, go ahead. No,
are you sure? Because I'm going to change it. I wanted to show empathy for the dad in a weird way.
Oh, well, that was the thing too. Because from the word go, you are like, oh, this guy. But as there were scenes in the movie where I was like, I kind of get where he's. I don't think it's right what he's doing at all. Right. But I do kind of, and I think the film wants you to go, he ain't a demon. He's not a monster. This guy. He's just he's as flawed as Ivy or Coop.
I don't know. This is where we're going to diverge. I don't like him. He's the worst. He's the worst one of the lot. He's worse than Ivy.
What? No, stop it right now. Well, here's the thing. I've read so many books, but like there's a Anne Rice book called Belinda that's very similar. It explores that idea of what do you do when you have a sort of a man who looks like he's put together, but is basically on the cusp of always falling apart. And then what do you do when a perfect storm enters the environment? So Ivy's like this little perfect storm who comes into this family's life that's already being disrupted, right? He's already feeling neglected. He's already feeling like he can't connect with his wife. His wife is too busy looping in her depression. You know, his daughter's rebelling. She's literally, when they opened up the film and she was like, my dad's actually Black, I Googled so hard. I was like, what is this 90s? Because I was like, this can't be. And then it becomes a joke in the film that she, you know, Coop is trying to pretend like she's not in that family, that she is adopted, but she's not adopted.
Oh, the layers of lies she has going on. She's like, oh, my father's actually Black. No, he's not. And then she keeps bragging about like, oh yeah, this is where I tried to kill myself. No,
right.
That's you know, pretentious teen girl. Like, yeah, I'm so deep, I tried to kill myself. Like, no, you didn't. You're putting on the air.
Every 16-year-old said that, though. Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally, 100%. Yeah, that is. Yeah. It's very true to the angsty adolescent experience in a lot of ways.
Yeah, this is me. Basically, I wasn't rich, if only. But without the richness, yeah, she's me.
But look, in a lot of ways, though, again, with the dad, though, because like, I love so many little details they have, because they focus so much on exactly what Ivy's hair is like, what she's wearing. Yeah. This is a really cool thing in Coop's hair. I love the eye thing she's got shaved into her head. Like, but then she's always trying to cover it too, because again, she's living double lives and stuff. But it gets to a point then with the dad where Ivy encounters him in the middle of the night and he's got his wig off. And it's like, and she's like, oh, look, makes you look more human. And there's scenes where he's looking at himself in the elevator mirror with his coworker, and he's worried about his appearance. And you kind of realize they're trying to go like, well, you know, teenage girls obviously might be very fixed on physical appearance and attractiveness and things like that, because that's what you're like when you're a teenager. But you find out that, this guy, 50-year-old man, he's in the same cycles. He's still worried. Like, I'm getting old. I don't look good enough for people. You know, he's very image focused as well. And,
and that's something that I found fascinating with this. I don't think we're going to have an answer to my question. I don't think you can answer it. But do you think maybe that Ivy was being serious when she said that, or was she trying to just say what he wants to hear to seduce him? You know, I think there might have been a touch of truth.
Well, we'll put it to you, Brittany. Do you think Ivy was seducing the dad because she actually liked the dad, or was there some other motive going on there?
Okay, this is, I think, very psychologically layered. So there are tropes, right? There's the Coop trope, the nerdy girl who wants to be rebellious but will never be the hot seductress. Then there's the girl who has no choice but to be the default hot seductress because that's how she manages her life. It's a really interesting skill, and it's a really interesting dichotomy between the two. And then the father, this like you said, aging, insecure man, his job's threatened, his life is on, the cusp of just, being destroyed every day. His relationship with alcohol. I think people like Ivy, when you can see people and what they need, it's easy to automatically give them the encouragement and the empathy, and then even falsely, even selfishly, kind of make people feel seen. And then when you feel seen by someone, you fall in love with them. You feel seduced by them. There is nothing greater in this world than feeling seen by somebody. And that power in the hands of a psychopath, a narcissist, is going to land you in hell, which I think is sort of the idea around the film, is that Ivy is a person with a power. She has a superpower to see people and to give them what they want, from the tattoo artist to Coop to the dad to the mom, every person she interacts with. But nobody sees Ivy. Nobody sees Ivy. The whole film, Ivy is truly alone.
I think it's even the fact too that Coop gives her name. She's like, when she gets blags the lift with her dad, she's like, your name's Ivy. And it's just like, Ivy rolls with it so easily. Like, okay, my name is Ivy now.
That's me now.
That's it's next level crazy, kind of been able to play people levels of, and then as you said, Brittany too, like narcissism and things like this. It's like it's just a really interesting character.
If this movie came out now, though, at the very end when she's died, spoiler alert. If it was made now, that would be a scene where the police come and they find her body, and you find out about her, like, her real name was blah, 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 and she's wanted in 10 states or something. It'd be really boring. I'm like, okay. I like that we don't know.
Yeah. I love the fact that they leave it, like they never explain. It almost, you're saying, Brittany, she has a superpower. It almost does feel like she's supernatural. Like it feels like it's kind of almost like a Fight Club Tyler Durden thing, where it's like, does Ivy even really exist? You know,
I thought that for a while. I thought that she didn't exist. Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that there's several sequels, and I think the second one stars Alyssa Milano, who was, I think even by her own admission, was kind of trying to do what Drew Barrymore was doing. She was like going off the Drew Barrymore scraps, basically.
Oh,
in the
she admitted
mid-90s.
that. Yeah, totally.
I will say, going off that idea of Fight Club, I do think as the viewer, I felt like I was learning a lesson about life. I felt like I was learning a lesson about when these energies come into your life, pay attention to the details. Isn't it odd that this family just allows this strange girl who's a minor to just live with them? Like, does nobody, right? Like in the movie, it's almost so unrealistic that it is almost realistic in a way. So I think the question I asked myself through the film was, okay, Brittany, you talk to thousands of people a year. You've definitely dealt with stalkers in the past. Like, what is the lesson I'm supposed to learn from this film? And I think the lesson was that, be wary of those who claim to know you and see you when they don't have the right and haven't earned you. So I think Coop learns, she learns, okay, when they get in the accident and Drew Barrymore thinks to switch her body, like to even consider that. I know people like that who are so self-aware, but yet so destructive that no matter how much Ivy is given love, support, consistency, she will always choose it's such a basic trauma response. It's so amazing to watch actually in a film. And like you said at the end, because we never know her true history, she's like a phantom of an idea of a person who could come into your life, see you, make you feel loved, and then destroy you.
I love too, like in that as well, when the dad calls her out and is like, you switched the friggin' the body, and she instantly goes into, I was doing that for you. I was going to help out with the insurance. Like she's got the lies are just lined up and ready to go and stuff. But
that's what. So honestly, in that very moment too, I was like, I am never dating again. I am never trusting anyone again.
Don't trust anybody, people.
In terms of her being like a phantom, though, like that was my thing. It's like, so with Poison Ivy 2, apparently what the plot line is that Alyssa Milano moves into like a girls' dormitory where Ivy used to live, and she sees pictures of her and becomes obsessed and wants to become like she almost has like from beyond the grave. The power of her image is influencing this girl to become a seductress.
It's like Friday the 13th.
I can see it though, right? Get an unstable teenage girl who sees this film. There's a lot of power to Ivy. Think about it. You're down and out. You have no structure, no community. And then you see an Ivy character who seduces her way into a wealthy situation. She, you know what I mean? Honestly, I could see a really messed up person watching this movie and falling in love with the idea of being Ivy. Absolutely. I could see that.
I was just more surprised that the sequels aren't about like the spirit of Ivy just inhabits another body or something.
Yeah, she goes into another teenager.
Yeah, it's like New Line Cinema. They made the Freddy Krueger movies. Like they could be like, yeah, this is our new franchise now. Is the ghost of Ivy hopping from body to body. And
that'd be great. This isn't even her first body. This is like her 10th body or something, or 1,000th body throughout the history of.
You find out like movie 6 is like, oh, she was given like sex demons gave her the power to
hop from. Stop! I'm curious. My DVD says this is unrated. Is that accurate?
Well, that is a question I was going to ask both of you, because I don't know if it's the version I got or if it's always like this, but there's a couple of the sex scenes where the picture quality dramatically dropped. And I thought to myself, is this like, have they added some bits in? Is it like a director's cut or something?
That actually does strike me. Like, I remember there's a cut you can get of a Friday the 13th where they took out a lot of the gore, which is like, why would you take that out of a Friday? The whole reason people are watching it is for the kills. And then later on, they put back, because there was a disaster, so they put back in for the DVD release, like grainy VHS quality, like this is the B-roll footage of those kills. We'll just put it back in the movie for you. The version I saw, I didn't notice anything like that, but it would not surprise me if there was an unrated one where it's like, yeah, we've added it back in all the really sexy stuff that we cut to get the R rating or whatever.
Even then, though, let me say, if that is the case with the one I watched, it's not gratuitous or anything. You don't really see anything.
No, it's very, like you said, it reminds me of something a woman would direct. It's very like sensual and erotic and slow. Like the scene, okay, guys, oh my gosh, the scene where the mom is in the bed and they go for it and they're like having their little seductress moment and then he looks over. and he looks at his wife. I was like, bro, this is layers.
That was one of the moments though where I was a bit like, because so many things with Ivy were like, well, I mean, was she doing all that wrong? Like they kind of paint her off in a villainous light from like the get go when. It's a very true to adolescence thing where like they're all hanging out by the tire swing or the rope swing, sorry, and someone comes along, hey, a dog just got hit, and they all run to see the dying dog, which is like teenagers are just the fucking worst, but they would totally do that. But then everyone's like, someone needs to put this dog out of his misery, and Ivy's the only one who will come up with the rock and just go, and everyone's like, oh, it's like, well, she had to do it. Like
that's the thing. It's trying to portray it like I think it's trying to set up. Oh, she's crazy. She's a psychopath. She doesn't get. But I think at the end of the day, it shows her more adult.
Well, then she reads the situation and she's like, well, this is what needs to be done, so I do. Yeah. Like that's, and it's you could argue that's what she's doing in the house. She sees this dysfunctional household. And she's like, well, the mother wants to die, and she's you know, and
well, she's you know what? Yeah, you know what? She'd be a great like early human, like caveman woman. She would survive so well, but in a society, I think she survives. She doesn't survive. Like she doesn't bode very well in because look, even as unhealthy as this family is, no one's crazy enough to really hurt anyone the way Ivy's willing to hurt people.
Yeah, she'd do well in Battle Royale.
Even with the tattoo artist, didn't you think it was interesting that these two teenage girls feel so comfortable with this grown man who's like spitting, like on them and like, the drink of alcohol to quote unquote sterilize the wound. Like, and I like that when the girls come together again, he like shows up to cuddle them and they're like, oh, gross. So, okay, I will say that 90s attitude is definitely what I've had most of my life. That sets me apart from like the newer generations where when a man is being kind of creepy, I'm like, get the F off me, bro. Like, don't even mess with me right now. And it's like a very, very 90s scrappy idea of like, look, you're not going to intimidate me. Isn't that interesting? They get into that man's van. They trust like strange men, the man on the bus. Like there's all these, like, they're so wild, these girls, but at the same time, it's, the freaking 90s. Like, I felt like that was so natural, right? Am I crazy? I don't know.
No, you're totally right. Yeah. People... I don't even know how to word. I won't even bother trying to word it better than you. You hit the nail on the head.
I'll take the win. Thank you.
There's so many like little lines though, because it is so 90s. But then there was lines in it I thought were incredibly modern, where and I really it just shone as a bit of dialogue to me. Where when Coop first brings Ivy back home, and she's like, "Oh well, I teach inner city kids how to read, a couple of nights a week." And Ivy just says like, "Oh, how very white of you." And I was like, "Oh my God, that I can imagine that in a movie today." A bit like,
great catch. Actually, I thought that scene was so interesting too. The way, okay, this is what I'm saying about the Ivies of the world though. Cause like there are Ivies in the world for sure. And I've read this in other like court, cause I've watched a lot of like Law and Order, like court cases, like true crime stuff. And there are cases where people will want to become the mothers or become, replace a family member in your home. And it's very interesting, but it's always like, it's like this dichotomy between what's right and what's good and what's fair. And I think Ivy struggles with this. Like you said, she's the one who's going to pick up the rock. She's the one who knows what to do. She was the one who unlocks the car. Look at her. The car is full. Sorry, we're switching around here. The car is full of dust. The mom's car. Oh, I'm sorry. My brain ADHD. Here we go. Do you remember the mom? How she's laying in bed, and what picture does the mom have by her bedside table? Not a picture of her and her family. Her in her car. Her car. Like, it's so shallow. It's almost like, I wonder if Ivy feels like you don't even deserve to have this family because you love the car more than your own family.
Yeah, but she knows exactly what to say to her, because I think that's when she goes into the whole, like, I would rather live one day with the top down than a lifetime in a box and stuff. It's like, it's exactly
that really
the right
spoke
thing.
to me, that line. I love that.
Yeah. Should also mention, too, that in a bizarre bit of, like, just, kismet, I guess, but, like, the mother is played by Cheryl Ladd. Who was one of the Charlie's Angels in the 1970s TV show.
I think she's beautiful. I'm not going to lie. I think she's so beautiful.
But when they remade Charlie's Angels in the early 2000s, who was one of the angels? Who replaced Cheryl
Drew
Ladd?
Barrymore!
There you go.
Everything's connected.
Oh my gosh. It's all connected. It makes sense.
Maybe that's what the casting director was just like, you know what? Drew Barrymore did a good job of replacing Cheryl Ladd in that one movie.
That's so
we should have had that recent Charlie's Angels movie. Should have been like Kristen Stewart kills Drew Barrymore and something.
Well, I can't remember where we were with the plot. Oh, they met. She goes back, kind of moves into their house because
I have to say, like, there are elements of the movie that are very cheesy, and it's such. Actually, I don't know, Brittany. Like you know, living in the US, you've been all over the country. Maybe you know more about this stuff than I do, but that strikes me as a unrealistic music video house. It's like no one lives in a place with like. The balcony windows are constantly open, and it feels like you're living in like a freaking coliseum half the time. Like I
think it's because they're so wealthy, though.
Okay, but like, so his job confused me. Was he a local broadcasting person?
It felt like he was kind of like the Alex Jones of his hometown or something. It was really weird. Like, he just comes out and gives angry editorials that apparently his daughter hates. Or does she really hate them, or she just wants his attention? It's kind of difficult to ascertain.
Wants his attention, wants stability, wants an understanding, definitely wants to be seen, which is why Ivy comes in and goes, I see you. And she goes, you do see me. And like, that's my best friend. And she has no friends. And like, I hate to say it, but Coops are the best target for Ivies.
Oh, no.
They're the best people to scam because they're so alone and gullible. And honestly, they're not bad people. They would never do like we saw, like Ivy does. You know, they would never assume, like, in the car, when Coop realizes that Ivy's singing the song for the mom and the mom's song. And she goes, wait, you were with my mother. Look, in that moment, my brain is so cynical. I've been like, oh my God, you were with my mother and my mom died. I would think Ivy killed my mom right away, but Coop doesn't do that. Coop is so sweet. Coop goes, what did my mom say? And I'm like, girl, Ivy was with your mom and didn't tell you. Don't you think that's sus?
Yeah, and Ivy instantly goes to that conclusion of like, what are you accusing me of?
That guilt.
She wasn't accusing you of anything.
That guilt. She could have played that moment. That's what I'm saying. The car accident. It's almost like the self-sabotage is so poetic in this film. It is really nice to watch. It's really a beautiful story.
It is.
In a chaos way.
I think that was the one bit that Ivy really doesn't play well, though. It is just like, because you can see she's so quick to be like, spin whatever thing's thrown at her. And then, even when Coop's not actually, she's like, oh, you were with my mother. It goes into it like, what are you accusing me? Like, it's such a bad play. But it's just, it's getting into that third act of the movie where it's like, well, now things have to start really going off the rails here.
Well, it's got to catch up with her, too. She is realistically in the film, from our understanding, a teenage girl. So as much as Ivy is this like traumatic, allegedly mature person, she is extremely childlike. She really reverts back in that moment to like her little side where she's like, I'm a kid again. And it makes me so sad for her. But in that moment, she's also, look at her driving, putting people's life at risk. And we've seen stories like that before. Actually, I've read news stories like that where people get into car accidents and literally switch bodies or make it look like they weren't driving because that's a lot of she knows she's going to prison possibly, right? It's like that fear of, oh my God, am I going to get arrested? I'm underage. I'm driving without a license, I assume. She's doing all these things. So like this is street smart people are so interesting because they understand like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? But they're not smart enough to avoid it in the first place. It's kind of interesting.
I wish I had a little bit of their skill. just
for sure. For sure.
But as you've alluded to, after she does move in with them, that's when things take the turn, isn't it? I mean, she'd already started seducing the dad straight away, pretty much in the car, but that's when she kind of, they're having a party and she orchestrates to have Coop leave, so she's alone with the dad.
There's so many little things, though, in terms of just like how the way the film's crafted, in that like the first time you see. I should say that dad is Tom Skerritt, who most people would know from Alien. He was the captain of the Nostromo in Alien. Of course, gets killed off, and I guess he's an actor. He's like, well, I've played invading forces breaking into my home, like in the past. So through Alien, Poison Ivy, same movie basically. But
why not double bill?
But the first time he's really checking out Ivy is she's out. And it's one of those things, too, of like, is this a deliberate thing of Ivy where she's kind of sunbathing in the garden?
I've got it on that scene right now.
Yeah, and it's like, and then he's looking. It's weird that they frame her reflection, but her reflection sort of refracts into like you see kind of multiple versions of her. And he's looking. And that's the way we see her because Ivy is whoever she needs to be in the moment. So she never has a one true being. She is whatever is required at the time.
She's a fractured person. She's all these different people, personalities.
Yeah, she's fractured maybe in her own psyche, but also to whatever end she needs to get to. But like at one point then later on, she mentions a line too of like, oh, I've been looking at life through the wrong side of the window. And it's kind of like, are they trying to allude back to that scene of like why they made a big deliberate point of him looking at her through the window and framing the shot in that way. And then for her to bring up a window later is very, and then the fact like what happens to the mother, like they have Chekhov's window is there from the get-go.
The outside, the window seems to be very important to everybody. Like windows outside, why is the window open when it's raining? There's like a lot going on there. And I think the window is the eye to the soul. Is that what they say? The eye, is that the same? So I think the
eyes are the window to the soul.
The eyes are that one. So like maybe it's like something to play off of that. Because I always wondered, like the mom wanted when it rained, you know what I mean? The windows were open or the door was open. That was so interesting to me because I understand when I feel like that, I just want to be outside but inside. So maybe that's like a correlation. I tried to relate it to my own feelings because as much as like feel very far from these characters, I also feel like they were really human in such a very like core way.
Well, I think that was what really struck me of the whole movie was that, like, again, I was expecting it to be like tawdry sex thriller from the early 90s where it's going to be like, and there were so many of them at the time. Of
God, every 5 minutes there's a new one.
Seduction and Basic Instinct and Fatal Attraction.
And they're almost all terrible. What's the other one? Jade, Lethal Lolita. There's a ton of them. Like there's ones that like single white female. There's always like someone infiltrates your house. And it's a crazy woman. And like I think we talked about it in the main season because like it seemed so apt to have Poison Ivy be a villain in a Batman movie in the mid 90s because it was in the midst of, well, women be crazy kind of thing in Hollywood. And we put it down to seducing poor men.
Well, I mean, I think we ended up going like, well, it must be something to do with like these Hollywood producers are all like greenlighting these movies about like these women won't leave me the hell alone. Like, come on, I flirted with them a little, and now they're coming back for something. What the hell's the matter?
Swinging it back to my empathy for the dad. Okay, so like, look, a coupe trope couldn't seduce a middle-aged man. It wouldn't work. He would see her as a kid, right? But an Ivy trope could seduce a middle-aged man because, and I hate to say this, some men are just so weak around seductress.
It's true.
And they're so weak. And so it's so easy to do it if you're an Ivy, but it's very hard to do it if you're a coupe, right? Like this is very interesting to me because I noticed that Hollywood actresses, even after Me Too and Weinstein, I would meet women who are like, I'm still going to go into Hollywood. And I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, I'm just going to I'm going to do it. I'm going to be the seducer and get my roles. And I'm like, so you're going to participate in the system. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay, that's counteractive to the movement, but that's
Very
okay.
much.
And like, that's the thing. There are Ivies in the world who will do these things. And so it is what it is, right? And then there's the coupes who don't want to be on the casting couch. They don't want to be seduced by older men. They don't want to be taken advantage of. And so I think recognizing that is going to be so key to us being more honest about like the diversity amongst humans and more honest with not all of us grow up like sheltered little nerds. Some of us grow up with really hard lives and seducing a married man is like the least of our problems. You know what I mean? So I think that was really human too, like really more honest about the conversation that I think we're not really having in public right now.
Yeah. I should also note actually as well that talking about that one scene of like Tom Skerritt looking at Ivy through the window really reminded me, probably enough in talking about Batman and Robin, another erotic thriller from the 90s, which is a lot cheesier than this and a lot more difficult to swallow because it's very much going like this lady is just crazy and that's the end all and be all of it, is The Crush with Alicia Silverstone.
Oh, I actually haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I haven't seen that
it's currently on Netflix now. It's a at times hilarious and also very interesting movie where she's a teenage girl seducing Cary Elwes, and he's a writer living in a temporary accommodation in a Kurtwood Smith's house, and his daughter is Alicia Silverstone, and she just throwing herself at him. But there is a scene where she's in a bikini deliberately outside his window as in a kind of like, I'm here to, and the movie very blatantly frames it as being like she is doing this deliberately to seduce this guy. Whereas again, Poison Ivy is kind of like, was Ivy doing that to seduce him?
See, I think
so.
I think so, and I think she's doing it smarter, right? Because in that description of that movie now, it's a bit obvious, isn't it?
It's the thing about that makes the Crush so difficult to swallow is that like it's always, I think she's supposed to be like 14 or 15 in it, and Cary Elwes is always like, I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm very tempted. And she'd be like, dude, no.
Whereas here, she does it more like, she makes it seem accidental, like, oh, you just found me outside, minding my own business.
It's a power play, because like when she first gets in the dad's car, notice that with every man, she always sits up front and claims she has motion sickness.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, I have to sit up front. She knows what she's doing. That's the problem, is like seducing is a tool of power. So like, that's why some women use it. Some men use it. Like, I mean, it is a tool, right? But the dad, I think, is a little, I can't tell if he's stupid or if he understands, because he must know what she's doing. But then maybe he knows, but then is like, oh, I'm not going to play with fire. But then the second that window scene happens, and then he drops her boots, and then he gives her money and goes, keep the change. That's when it's on. That's when it's officially he is participating in the game, in my opinion.
Oh, totally. 100%.
There's a transformation in him from that point, yeah.
There's so many weird things with those boots, though. I think maybe because I'm such a friggin' skinflint. Like, at one point, Ivy loses... I think that's how she gets in with Coop as well, because at one point, they become, like, shopping buddies, and it's like, oh, it's in the system now of, she shops, I pay. But there's a thing where Ivy, like, she drops her cowboy boot down from the rope swing, and it's just like, well, I'm going to have to get these replaced, and then Coop ends up replacing them. It's like, go and get the boot. Like, just climb down and get it. Like, what the hell's the matter with you? But
no, that's a great ploy to get someone. I dropped. It's a handkerchief thing. Like when you drop your handkerchief, you're supposed to get the guy to come give it to you, and that's how you start the conversation.
Yeah, clever.
It's a seduce game. Oh, so okay. Weirdest scene in this whole film that made no sense to me, when she had the boots drop in the water. Why did she put them on in her bedroom and then spill the water in the bedroom?
Yeah.
What was that?
I think that might have been just a cheesy movie way of being like, she's the bad girl. She's still going to wear the boots and she's going to splash the water onto the floor like she doesn't care.
The only thing I could assume, because I thought the same, but the only thing after racking my brain was like, okay, well, she's going to take the money, but she's not replacing the boots. So she doesn't want him to see her putting them on. Like, so she's like, I'll put them on out of the way.
Oh.
Like, you can't see me.
Again, it's a very human thing, though, because that's probably what I would do, too. Someone gave me money for, this is buy new boots, and I was like, well, I could just wear the wet ones.
Because
they'll
be fine, they'll dry.
I'll take your money. Like, I'll use this money on something else. But
Which I think he probably knew as well. That's what I'm saying. Like, how smart are these characters? Because you must know she's like playing a scam, but maybe they did. I know Coop didn't. Coop was so innocent the whole time. But the parents must have known on some level that this girl it was awkward all around. Like, okay, why did she have a scholarship to the school? Who like, how did that work out? Was she allegedly very smart then? What was the scholarship on?
Yeah.
It's like all of these things. It feels like almost like you guys said in the beginning, like maybe it's a Fight Club thing where she's like a phantom. Because she's not even, there's too many questions that I needed answered.
I mean, do you guys even believe, because she gives a story about like, oh yeah, my aunt gets money to look after me.
Oh, right. Foster care maybe?
But that's the thing, like, do you even, I would not be surprised if like Ivy didn't have a home to go to. There is no aunt.
Right.
I think she went down to the tire swing that day. She's like, I'm going to find somebody.
Yep.
Somebody will take me in because that's the way this works.
And it's got to be a coup.
She's done it before. She's been... Again, and as if the original ending would be like she'll hitchhike to another place and she'll do it. She'll like might be exactly the same scenario, but it'll be a similar scenario where she'll seduce her way in through another family. And
you're right. Wait, I'm sorry. If she had an aunt, wouldn't the aunt want to be like, "Yo, where are you at every night?"
You think maybe she pegged Coop as being like she'll never ask about this because you think she would be like, we can go to your house once in a while. You don't have to come and hang out at my house. But Ivy's like, Coop will never. I know, poor little rich girl. She'll never ask to come to my place. Like,
also,
it never comes up in the movie.
Why go to a normal house when you can hang out in a mansion all day?
Yeah,
I mean that's a fair question. This is a nice house. Usually, big houses like this, even in movies, feel very like cold and sterile to me. But this at least still feels like a family home.
I think that people's energies brought it out. I actually thought the maid was the funniest character. Her facial expressions were on point.
She's great. She isn't in the movie enough.
Yeah.
I think I felt really bad for they made that one because there's a bit where I think Coop's trying to make like an espresso or something, and she just spills everything all over the floor. And at no point does she say sorry or I'll get it. It's just the maid just looks at her like, God damn it.
Honestly, this movie makes working class people look a lot smarter than the rich people.
Yeah.
Well, that's accurate.
Because again, everything about it, like, I like Coop as a character, but there is so many little things, like, she doesn't think about the maid. She doesn't think about checking out Ivy's homestead. She's more like, oh, well, you know, she's here, we're friends. She's here for me. Like, she doesn't, it seems to be a very, almost like a one-sided friendship in a lot of ways. And
yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't considered it that way. It's sort of inadvertently a bit selfish.
Yeah. Oh, totally. That's what I'm saying. They like live in a bubble. It's like their little rich bubble, and they don't ever think about how other people are existing. The dad, the way he drives, the way he almost hits the truck, and the truck says something like, what does he say? Something about like you being a rich person, and the guy and the dad goes, I earned it. It's like, okay, buddy, like, okay, you're flashing your stuff though. And also that house was quite extravagant for like a local newscaster. So I kind of imagined he was like more of a Tucker Carlson, like a very famous newscaster maybe, because that house was quite extravagant, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's got to be, right? Because I don't know if it's just, well, you're making it sound like it's the same, but I was thinking maybe in America, newscasters are like the richest people in town or something.
Only if you're a national.
It might have been just like, oh, it's the 90s. Everything was great. Everybody just had money falling out of their ass all the time.
Nothing's ever going to get bad again.
And then he gets replaced. When he came into work and he saw he was getting replaced, I love that slow deterioration of his existence. The alcohol, the hair disheveled, coming into work looking sick. I do love details like that in movies. I'm like, oh, here's the downward spiral. Here we go, baby. It's coming. And it's kind of, it is what it is.
I also really liked that we didn't have like a whole storyline about like, oh, he's slowly getting worse and work are getting annoyed with him, and it builds up to them replacing him. Because it kind of felt like he was so checked out from everything and so focused on this one aspect of his life that even he didn't see it coming. He's just like, what's happening?
I thought it tied quite well into, though, the fact that, like, again, they kind of give you something to sympathize with him with, because we find out, he is wearing a wig and he is very concerned, like, am I looking old? Am I past it and stuff? How am I going to maintain what I've got going on? And he's also got, the specter of his much younger, because he's in his 50s, his wife's 38, but she's dying. So it's kind of like, well, how much longer have I got left and stuff? And the fact that the same week his wife dies through seemingly suicide, he comes into work and they've not even told him. This is like, oh no, you're gone. Sorry, we just didn't think to tell you in advance.
That's a good point, isn't it? After the death.
Yeah, it's immediately like near enough the next scene after his wife's gone.
That makes it seem even worse on their part. That's horrible. You can't do that to someone.
But again, that almost makes it sympathetic to him, because it's kind of like, this guy, he's well aware of like how he has to look and how he has to be perceived by the public, and he is stressed and like, I've got all this wealth, but I have to maintain it. I can't just rest on my laurels. I've got to keep, because it literally is so ruthless that the week my wife commits suicide, they will fire me because I'm not cutting it anymore.
Well, even more than that, it might look bad for one of their newscasters to have a wife who just killed herself.
Oh yeah.
Like, what if it's so ruthless? Like that's what I'm saying. He's nothing to them. Like he has no home. That's what I'm saying. I'm sorry. Ivy seeing people is such a drug to people because his job doesn't see him. They don't care. No, his wife doesn't see him. She doesn't care anymore. And this one thing that makes him feel like a human is this teenage girl who is also bad for him. But that's why he has that awakening when he's in the rain and he's like, you were the one driving. And I'm like, okay, how are you and Coop gonna like recover from this moment? Like she saw you having sex with her friend, bro. Like, how are you guys gonna recover from this? Maybe they never do. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they become closer.
Oh, that's the thing. They do make a point of like, there's no proper epilogue. It's kind of like, that ain't ever gonna be the same again. That house.
Right.
No.
It's not like, okay, well, it's, back to school tomorrow, young lady. It's gonna be like, no, our relationship is shattered. Apparently they actually improv again because Bob Shea insisted that the ending had to be changed at the last minute, so they had to bring Drew Barrymore back to shoot falling and dying, the proper Hans Gruber death of the necklace snapping and stuff. And apparently Sarah Gilbert improv the whole. At the end, she's like, I think the last line is like, maybe I still love her and stuff like that. And apparently she improv that in the recording booth, and they're like, that's the ending. But the director said that, but apparently all the people in the studio were like, what? There's no way she'd still love Ivy after all this.
Oh, trauma bonding's real.
And Gilbert and the director were like, nope, that is exactly what the character.
That makes the whole movie more fascinating in retrospect when you hear that line out of her mouth, because it's like, it's like a drug, like you said. She kind of is still fascinated by this person who swept in, changed everything, and then went. I mean, she died, but she left, you know.
She had more of a connection to Coop than her mother or her dad ever did. She actually, literally, Ivy still connected with her in a much, much deeper level. And the fact that, she was calling in bomb threats to the TV show to get a rise out of her dad. Like, that's how desperate their situation was.
Yeah.
And even in the aftermath, the fact that she's still saying, like, in the narration, presumably, years later or whatever, going, like, maybe I still do love her. It indicates that the relationship, she's still not connected with anyone on the same level that she did with Ivy through that bizarre con that happened.
I think that's really relatable. Like, obviously, I've not been in the same situation. Who has? Very few people, I hope. But when someone does hurt you, you still, I don't know, you still think of the old them.
Yeah.
So that could be what she's doing here. She's thinking about, although it wasn't a long time ago, she's thinking about the Ivy she met that day at the swing. The
one who made her feel like alive. Like the addiction is real. Like addiction to people is a real phenomenon. I think people do get it. That's why you keep going back to your ex. You break up, and you keep going back because you are kind of waiting for that high you had when you were first the happiest with them.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that would be a thing. I actually thought that humanized everybody even more. I thought this, again, I just feel like this was really, especially as somebody who's read so many books on trauma, I'm like, oh man, this is like somebody's life for sure. 100% somebody has gone through this. I don't know
even the actual, because one of the screenwriters and the producer, Melissa Goddard, who it was her who spearheaded the whole project. It's based basically on something she had a niece staying with her, or someone was staying in her house apparently for some period of time and ended up seducing her stepdad when she was a teenager.
Damn.
And so I don't know if it's exactly like this, but it is based on some level of a true story, which is probably why It Rings has been like, there's a very human story going on underneath all the
that makes perfect sense.
The sleazy, sexy sax and all that business. Which
yeah, I could see it.
The one bit, because I think as the movie goes on, it does, because it goes into more melodrama territory. I think the point of no return really is Ivy and the dad having sex basically over the comatose wife.
I'm pretty sure that is a point of no return. Yeah. Yeah,
that's the one bit where I was like, this is pretty messed up.
So Coop has an addiction to Ivy when I think she was like, that's my best friend, right? Like she's hooked. But then you notice she has a relationship where she's kind of mad at her sometimes and on again. The dad becomes addicted at certain points. The mother, you can see when the mom gets hooked. It's like they're all getting hooked to the same Ivy. Get it? Ivy. Here we go.
Love it.
So I see that through the whole film. Oh, and the dog, that scene almost made me cry. I was like, oh no, nothing's worse than when your animal but what did Ivy use to seduce the dog? She had something in her pocket. Wasn't it treats?
Yeah.
It's that one crinkle she does, and that's the thing that sways the dog. It's like, so many little deliberate scenes done like that. It's like, this is how this works.
And she'd been working on the dog already by having the secret treats in the first place. Because why did she have treats hidden around to feed the dog? Exactly. So she goes, oh, nobody else gives you I don't think that's it. She's working on the dog like she is the people.
Yeah.
Totally. So actually, I was surprised she didn't go for the maid. That was the only person she didn't bother seducing.
Yeah.
As far as maybe the maid's is like, I see this.
I think the maid did. I actually think the maid was really sharp. She gives this look when the espresso gets spilled where she's like, I'm smarter than all you mother, I'm smarter than all you people. And I was like, I felt that from her.
Oh yeah, so maybe Ivy saw that in her and it's like, I'm not, and
avoided her. I'm telling you.
There could be cut scenes of that maid, like every incident that happens in the house, like when my wife committed suicide, as the maid rolling her eyes, like, yeah, right, man.
Yeah, exactly.
You ain't seeing what's right in front of your goddamn face.
Totally.
I was like, oh, Coop's going out for do so and so. I was like, I'm sure she is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, and it's so many little. Couple of scenes like I was like the it gets a little too in the melodrama, like the Ivy's deliberate when the guy rings up to be like, okay, so on this day we're gonna need you, Coop, and she's like, I'll give her the message, and they have the big scene of like, that's the dad's party, and it's just Ivy been like, oh look what I can do with this. And it's like, It's a bit cheesy.
Oh, I didn't mind that at all.
Very
I loved
plausible,
that.
though. I
Yeah.
believed it. I loved her on the staircase. Oh my god, I'm so stupid. And I'm like, oh, this bitch.
I know. As viewers, we can see right through it, but I would probably fall for it in the moment, you know?
Totally.
Maybe I thought actually in watching it though, I was surprised she owned up to it. I thought she'd be like, I don't know what happened. That's
No,
very
she didn't
mysterious.
own up to it. No. She didn't own up to it. She said, oh, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I did that. I feel so bad. She didn't own up to it. She made an excuse that was plausible enough, but yet not. But yes, totally, right?
That is how you lie in a clever way, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
If you just come out with an out-and-out lie, people will catch on. But if there's sprinklings of truth and reality and you take a bit of blame in the lie, then it's believable.
Oh, it's me. It's all me. I'm the board. Oh, I'm so sorry. This was my fault. She really is like a fake accountability.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's also it's the instantly appearing as a kind of wounded animal. I'm like, oh no, poor. Like she instantly makes you kind of sympathetic because you're so like, oh, I'm so stupid. It's like I can't stay mad at you, Ivy. It's okay.
Yeah,
but
your instinct is to say, oh no, you're not stupid. It could happen to anyone. Don't worry.
Yeah, so it probably would have been way worse had she been like just not said anything, because then it would have been like, did Ivy do this? And then it would have been like a slow burning kind of like, I've got my suspicions about this young woman.
She played right into that dumb blonde card, that dumb blonde card. She played right into it. And look, the dad was so eager to be like, oh, yeah, she could just take over. And like Coop being so innocent was just like, I have to help these like kids. And it was just, oh my gosh, layer after layer. Very well done. Very well done.
I think the dad was kind of a dick though, considering like how much money he has. And when his daughter's like, well, I have to go help these kids. And they're kind of like, well, now we're at an impasse. It's like, dude, just hire somebody to come in and do it. Like, what? Yeah. Why were you making your daughter do it in the first place?
Don't rely on your children for labor.
It's like, oh, the reason I have such a nice house is because I don't pay people to do this stuff for me.
One of my favorite bits of the movie is towards the end, actually, where Coop, when she, they have the car crash that you mentioned, and it's when she breaks out of the hospital. And she's almost like, she's falling apart. It's almost like the end of a horror movie where the hero's like bleeding and bloody, but they're still going, they're coming.
Totally. I thought she was so BA.
Yeah.
There's so many things too, like things I've been reading and watching recently. It's like a hospital seems to be the easiest place in the world to break out of.
Well, at the end of the day, right, it's a bit different because I work in a mental health hospital, but in a normal hospital, I mean, if you want to leave, you kind of can just go.
It's just weird though to see like someone with like a visible wound on their head, wearing like the paper nightgown or whatever, wandering out bare feet. It's like somebody should have said something.
Well, that goth guy liked it.
Yeah, what's up with the goth guy? I was confused. Was he just driving the city bus, or did she just get on a random bus?
I think
I thought it was this is like an actual bus, but it seems like no, it looked to me like he had bought a secondhand bus and turned it into like the goth bus.
Yeah, I assumed it's like his transportation, like maybe he's in a band in town, but he hasn't got another car, so he's just driving. Maybe when they have a gig, the rest of the band are in the back, and so he's just driving. He sees somebody. I assume he's going to a gig as well because he thinks she's like dressed up for something.
Yeah.
I thought maybe they're going to say it was like Halloween or something, and that would have made more sense.
It just was so strange. He drove by a hospital, saw a girl in a gown, bleeding from her head, and was like, did you do that yourself? I'm like, all right.
It's a bit weird. But you have to remember as well, she is massively hallucinating. Maybe that didn't happen that way.
Oh, good point. I thought that was really fun, actually, because I thought it was realistic with the head concussion, but also, like, when you're running on adrenaline and something's wrong, like, guys, I'm not even kidding you. When the dad came to the hospital and didn't believe her, I thought for a second, I was like, kill yourself. This is psychotic. Like, how are you going to ever get anyone to believe anything you're saying? Because it's so crazy, but she's right and she knows. And I think like, it's just, that must have felt so frustrating to realize the truth and not have anyone believe you.
It was like a proto, I don't know if you ever watched the Hannibal TV show, Brittany.
Yes. So, oh my gosh, the way he messes with him.
Yeah, but at the end of season 1, I remember like as that was airing, me being like, what? Because season 1 ends with like, he's just manipulated Will Graham into everyone thinking he's crazy and getting them sent to an asylum. Yeah. There's a version of this movie that just ends like that. It's like, yeah, Sarah Gilbert ends up getting like, you killed your mother, and now you're getting sent down for it. And I'd even like,
literally,
like it could have gone that way.
I would like that, and I did not consider that this is a bit Hannibal, this film.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why but I know me and John are massive fans of Hannibal, so
I
it might be
love
like,
Hannibal.
well, that's why we like the movie.
And Hannibal's
me
super
too,
queer
same.
too.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. No, that show's so good, but exactly how I felt. So much anxiety for Will the whole time. So much anxiety for Coop. I just felt, because I don't know if you know, like I have borderline, and a lot of it's based off abandonment and feeling trapped. And I have a great fear of being like manipulated. And so a big part of me is like, are you trying to play me right now? I'm always like wondering, because you do meet these people, especially with my job. I talk to, and I've had a stalker. They are very similar energies to Ivy. So you're always like, are you an Ivy? Are you an Ivy trope?
Oh God.
Because like you are worried, because people do play the sympathy card, or people play the, I'll help you, I see you card. It's very scary when you don't know what you're dealing with. And at the same time, in a very messed up way, it also is like one of the greatest like thrillers, psychologically speaking, that it just like enthralls you. You almost want to figure it out like a puzzle. So it feels like a mystery. So Hannibal, Coop, Ivy, all of this, like I love the psychological perspective of the human. I
kind of want to go now, because Brian Fuller, the guy who made Hannibal, so out with his, like, well, he's openly queer as well. For one, he's out in multiple ways, but he's usually so forward with his influences. So he'll be like, oh yeah, the Hunger, like the Tony Scott movie, very visually, obviously referenced in Hannibal a lot. But I imagine if you Googled Brian Fuller, Poison Ivy, there's probably an interview with him saying like, yes, the relationship between, it's very blatantly based on, I would not be surprised.
Wouldn't be surprised either. Oh, why do we like these things? Is it just because it's so fascinating?
Well, yeah, but at the end of this movie, I was so like, it struck me so strange, but then it's like, it has to be that way. But like, the most interesting character in the movie, Ivy, gets the least answers. And it's like, but if they gave you those answers, it wouldn't be as good a movie. So I was like, yeah, I guess. And I don't know, what do you guys feel about the changed ending? Would you rather have she went on to somewhere else and we didn't know what happened next, or do you think like, no, the death is apt and it's a fair enough kind of moment to there's nothing you could do beyond that anyway, so why not? I
prefer it the way it is in the finished film. I mean, I could see a version of it with that other ending, and that's fine, but I've seen that in a million other movies, and it's just a way to get a sequel out, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah,
we don't need that in this. This is a self-contained thing. And it's almost like this is finally ending Ivy's her own trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's one way to, again, maybe, she was making herself into a version of the mother who wanted to die. Well, as you were saying, Brittany, did she really want to die and stuff? But then maybe does Ivy herself, does she want it to stop as well? Maybe she wants out of this kind of cycle she's in herself.
Oh, I never thought about that. She literally transforms into the mother. And what does the mother
she
want
dies
to
at
do?
the same window.
Go out the window, yeah.
It's the same death and stuff. So
I felt relief. I felt like a relief, because I had such anxiety through the whole film, but I also felt relief for Ivy. Like you said, maybe she's stopping the cycle, because like, what do we do with these humans, right? Like I feel for them. Like a part of me has like great empathy for them, and a part of me is like, please never get involved in my life, please. Like stay away from me.
Because what would Ivy do? Like she's not one day just going to go, oh, you know what? I'm going to live a button down life now. Like,
oh yeah. I think even then, if she ended up like somehow bagging and marrying like a friggin' Rupert Murdoch or something, it wouldn't stop then. It would be, I think it's more like she would be the compulsive, like it's not the wealth she's looking for,
right? It's
like she'll keep doing it no matter what happens. It's kind of like a weird version of have you guys ever saw The Hitcher with Rutger Hauer? Great horror movie from the mid-80s.
Yeah.
Also intensely homoerotic. Very, very. I think I didn't pick up on it when I was a kid, and I watched it like a year ago, and I was like, holy crap, this movie. But that's the thing. Like, I remember not really understanding it as a kid, but like loving it now, where it's about C. Thomas Howell picks up a hitchhiker, and it's Rutger Hauer, and he's a serial killer. And the whole movie, Rutger Hauer is slaughtering everyone around C. Thomas Howell. C. Thomas Howell no one believes him that this guy's killing everybody. He gets arrested, and then he wakes up in the police station, and everyone in the police station is dead, and then Rutger Hauer's unlocked the cell and let him go, just so he can mess with them more. Again, very Hannibal-like in a weird way. But at points, the amount of times in the movie, Rutger Hauer keeps saying to C. Thomas Howell, like, here is a gun, I want you to shoot me in the head. because I want you to stop me and stuff. It's like,
Ooh.
it's kind of like, it's a weird, you could read this in the same kind of way of like, maybe Ivy does want to be stopped and stuff. But
yeah, I think so. I think there's like, I felt relief for everyone, even the dad, when he sees the body. A part of me is like, I wonder if he feels relieved, because I mean, how would you, knowing she's still alive in the world, I think would drive me crazy.
Oh yeah, you'd never sleep thinking about that.
And think about how many people she's going to impact, and like, are you responsible, and how do you explain to people this happened? It's so layered, and sometimes I feel like death is a release. Like, I mean,
yeah,
you know what I mean, in a poetic way.
I will also note though, like of all the early 90s erotic thrillers where it was like, you know, crazy broad comes in and messes up the lives of the men and stuff, only one ended with the villain getting away with it. Was The Last Seduction with Linda Florentino. But it is always a real note of, and yeah, a lot of the rest of them is like, no, they always have to get killed off and stuff, and there's only one that ever bucked the trend. But apparently I think it came to, there was 4 endings made for this, and then eventually they landed on this one.
Wow.
And then I think Roger Corman, maybe not Roger Corman, but whoever was the producer, Bob Shea from New Line was like approached the director and was like, would you consider now maybe doing a second one with Drew Barrymore and like have the character live on? And the director, Cache, was just like, nope, it's like, you made your choice, now she's dead. And then years later, she's like, yeah, I really regret actually killing off Ivy.
Wow,
No,
really?
you shouldn't. Don't regret it if you're listening to this. I'm sure you're not. Don't regret it, because it was a good move.
Yeah.
And there's no way a sequel would be good. I don't think.
It just,
Wow.
why? Like, that, well, yeah, I can't even imagine one where we'd want to all live through that again.
I mean, Brittany, because you bought the DVD, I saw you own Poison Ivy 2 now.
I'm going to watch it now just to be able to, and I think I'm going to have my audience, I'm going to recommend the movie and have us discuss it, because I think it's so layered that way. I really liked it. Like, I think it was a good film.
Oh, yeah, that was my big takeaway, is like, I always thought, again, because of the low ratings and the fact it was a bit of a bomb, and it seems, the way they market it, you look at the posters, it looks very much like sexy Drew Barrymore.
Yeah, and cheap. Even though like it had a budget of $3 million, and it only made at the box office 1.8.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So it is a bomb, you're right.
But like, we came out with the last movie, well, not the last movie, but like one of the other movies we reviewed for this hiatus was Hercules in New York, which is a great movie, but it's a terrible, terrible movie.
Yeah.
Like, it deserves like all the low ratings. Like, yeah, I 100% understand why that movie is lowly rated. I cannot for the life of me figure out why this has not got a much better reputation.
I don't get it at all. And like, when reading like quotes from magazines and newspapers and stuff, they're really scathing, and I don't see it at all. Like, Roger Ebert dissed it. He said, here, the casting is so wrong that nothing quite works. Like, what were you watching?
No, the casting was great.
Yeah.
The casting is literally so perfect. Maybe, did you think it was like the purity, like prude kind of time in the 90s, maybe? Like, people thought it was too scandalous, maybe?
Well, Variety did mention that. Their quote was, they said, suicide, hints of lesbianism, murder, staged accidents, and every other applicable melodramatic contrivance is dragged in. It's like, oh,
Damn.
Jesus.
I mean, to be fair, that is all accurate, but like, what's the problem?
Yeah,
like,
so that's the negative. Yeah.
It's but yeah, it's and looking back now too, if I had to be like, well, what would you say is like the quintessential Drew Barrymore role? It's not going to be Sugar from Batman Forever, because it's like, well, we love Sugar because we did that movie minute by minute, but it's like, oh, it's a very forgettable part in a lot of ways. Forgive me, Sugar, for saying so.
Not to us, because we literally spent weeks talking about it, probably.
Yeah. But then, you know, like, well, Gertie from E.T.'s, like, it doesn't really count. You know, it's
right.
like, you know, not Charlie's Angels, no, not Donnie Darko. What is the Drew Barrymore role where she gets to shine the brightest? I'd say it's probably Poison Ivy. Like,
her acting in this is amazing. Actually, this sounds so random, but the scene where, I think it's the dog scene, where she takes off the skirt and throws it at Coop, and she walks out with just her underwear on. Something about that scene made me think, man, this woman is so comfortable in her body, comfortable in this role. I felt really like she really owned that movie in a way that a normal 16-year-old actress, I don't know, like Natalie Portman maybe comes to mind, but it takes like, how many of these kinds of, I'm so surprised that Natalie Portman gets so much credit for like being a young actress who plays these roles, but Drew Barrymore, I've never heard about until this movie.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was really, really good. She owned it. She was absolutely the top in this film.
Without a shadow of a doubt. And I don't mean people to have difficulties in their life, but maybe you have to have lived a life like she had to be able to play this kind of part.
I think so.
I think maybe like back then people were like, yeah, because she's tabloid fodder. Mm-hmm. And people were like, oh, we all know about, like 12-year-old coke addict, alcoholic Drew Barrymore starring in the sleazy sexploitation movie. Maybe that was part of the dismissive of it. Whereas, again, I think if people had just watched it with maybe more of an open mind, knew that she was, she's... I don't know if she's in the producer's chair on it, but again, she worked with the director very carefully. She knew what she was... Drew knew what she was making, even, as young as she was. And I think the director was very open to working with her in a non-exploitative fashion. So I think it's just a really good film. I think great. It really needs to be redeemed.
I saw a YouTube comment that made me laugh my ass off. It said something like, this movie, I'm so sad that Drew Barrymore was so exploited as a child. And yes, I loved every second of it. And I'm like, oh, damn. It's like, what's this exploitation? It's hard to know. I think that is my favorite question to ask. Like, okay, what do we do here? But like you said, emancipated teen, and no offense, whatever her life was before couldn't have been that great. She was an addict at 12.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. People always say, I mean, you don't hear it as much these days because hopefully people are thinking a bit better about it, but they used to always, that was an insult to her. Like, oh, she used to be a drug addict when she was a kid. Isn't that crazy? Ha, ha, ha. And the thing I always thought was, that's saying more about the world, really.
Yes.
That she was in a situation where she could be a drug addict and an alcoholic at 12. That's crazy. How could you let that happen to a kid?
Yes.
I mean, even to consider as well, like, her godfather was Steven Spielberg. Like, is Steven Spielberg. Like, her godfather is Steven Spielberg. And, like, she did things like, like, she posed, probably, like, a couple of years after this, she posed nude for Playboy. And Steven Spielberg then had a doctored version of the magazine where they like, photoshopped clothes onto her. Sent it to Drew Barrymore as a gift saying, like, cover yourself up. And then she, in, like, retaliation, dressed up as a nun and took a series of photos of her, like, praying at, grave sites and stuff like that. And sent it back to Steven Spielberg and stuff.
That's the thing. Like, you can't tell someone to do that, Steven. What are you doing? She can do what she wants. Leave her alone.
I am really intrigued, though. I would love to get into, like, really into the nitty-gritty of Drew Barrymore. Like, we talked about it a bit during, like, the Batman Forever season when she popped up, but, like... There's things where, Corey Feldman, a big star of the 80s, and he's coming out about, like, all the pedophile sex stuff that's going on in Hollywood. And he's like, I can name names, I can tell you all of these sort of things. And one of the, the major child stars of the 80s, and Drew Barrymore went through everything else, like, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, stuff like that. Never any sexual exploitation. And Corey Feldman's addressed that and saying, like, well, that's because she was Steven's girl. Everybody
protected.
in Hollywood knew, don't touch Steven Spielberg's goddaughter.
Gosh, this is so gross.
It's gross that is a normal topic of conversation and thought process.
Absolutely.
But even that's like, so people are like, don't touch her in that way. But yeah, let her be a coke addict. And don't intervene in anywhere there. Like, what the hell is going on in that
that's the
town?
thing. People they're not even enabling it. They're actively making it happen because a 12-year-old can't get coke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to end on a downer. Like I'll reiterate what you said, Ben. This is a great movie, and I say that as someone who doesn't really like erotic thrillers. I just usually find them very slow and boring, and here's 15 minutes of sensuality, and it's like not really sensual usually, is it?
Yeah. The only other one I remember really enjoying was Single White Female, but I think that probably hasn't dated well. Nah. But I remember Jennifer Jason Leigh being really, really good in it. But
I think we'd all at least then recommend people watch this if they have. I mean, if you've listened to this and you haven't watched it, strange choice. But, people do that with our show. So, you know what? If you haven't, I say watch it.
Yeah.
I think if you want to seek it out, Brittany knows where you can get the DVD, apparently.
Amazon, baby. Like, actually, I'm going to have my audience watch it so they can listen to this podcast and know what we're talking about, because this was a really good conversation about it. I feel like we touched on all the layers in my notes here, and I felt like there is so many layers. I think this is a movie I could probably watch again and talk about it in even deeper layers, but just having seen it once, I mean, I really enjoyed it. I'm so glad I have the DVD now so I can watch it whenever I want.
Thank God we got you to buy a good film then.
Yes, thank you.
But yeah, I mean, I'm ready to wrap this. Yeah.
We will
wrap up this Ivy and get out of here.
And thanks, guys, for having me on again. I really appreciate it.
Oh, anytime. Always a pleasure having you on, Brittany.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, you'll have to be back when we return with more exciting Bat Minutes. But for
Yes,
now,
please.
we will head off, tumbling out of the window of Wayne Manor. Brittany, do you have anything you'd like to promote or tell people to check out coming up?
If you're feeling like it, I mean, I'm doing more live shows, which is very new for me. So I'm going live 3 times a week now on YouTube. So just Brittany Simon on YouTube. If you guys want to come join me, we have a very lovely community on the internet, and I'm so lucky to have them around me. It's such a great place to be. So if you're interested, come join us. We go live 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
Check all of that out, everybody. And, join us again soon. We'll be back with more exciting mystery movies. Should we give a hint at what we're going to do next, or have we not? We haven't really settled on what we're doing next.
I think even because we've got a couple in the bank, so it's like, I don't know, but this one might come out before the one we recorded before this one.
That's true. So I won't hint at anything yet. You'll just have to wait and see. Keep your eyes peeled. Keep your ears open? I don't know what you say. Primed, ready to hear more of our wonderful nonsense. We will see you again soon, Batmites.
You can look, but you better not touch. Poison ivy, poison ivy. Late at night while you're sleeping, poison ivy comes creeping around.
We'll be back.
Yeah.